Good morning, Juliet. How are you?
Hello, Ruth. Very good. Very good to see you.
Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in England, so yep, it's great to see you in Hong Kong.
No, I'm in England too. I
How
landed a
are
couple of
you?
days
Okay.
ago. Yeah,
Oh,
slightly
okay.
jet lagged. I'm hoping
Okay.
that I can make sense for the next 40 to 50 minutes.
Yeah.
So we've not met in person, but thanks for doing this. We come across each other on the usual social media platforms and we're working in the same area. So I think that you have a lot to contribute to this discussion. This is Destination Education, UK, everything and anything about UK education, specifically independent education. So I know that you are somewhat of an expert. So perhaps you could just start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks very much, Ruth. Yes, well, I was educated in UK independent schools. I've experienced being at a day and boarding schools, both in the UK and also in the United States. I've got four children who are also in independent schools. I've also taught in independent schools, and I also trained as a teacher and studied at the University of Cambridge and have been tutoring and helping prepare other students for independent schools for 20 years.
Mm. So you said that you went to the US and the UK. How did that happen? Was that families?
Yes, well, it was a family situation. So I moved to America at the age of 9 and lived there for 4 years, and then came back to the UK at the age of 13.
It's different, isn't it? We have a lot of parents who are looking at boarding schools and actually haven't even decided whether the UK is the right environment for their children. Do you come across that?
I think so. I mean, for international parents, it is a huge decision to send your child overseas. And, it's really important that both parents are happy with the decision, that the child is on board as well, because it is a huge change. I mean, I've seen it from my own perspective, moving country at the age of 13, which, a lot of the families that I work with do. They sometimes move, even earlier. And it's a big change. So everybody really has to be on board.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's talk a little bit. You mentioned that they are starting to come to the UK earlier, which is something that I've noticed as well. And I've been meeting schools this week, and they're starting boarding from year three, mostly military families and not necessarily international. But we can talk a little bit about that. So, you know, you, how long have you been working in this field, Juliet?
So I've been tutoring and teaching for 20 years now. So
Wow.
after I qualified as a teacher, I was a lawyer before that. I taught in a prep school in London, and then had children. So after having children, well, during the same time as having children, I began tutoring and have been doing private tuition really now for 20 years, which works very well with having my own children and seeing their experience through the British education system as well.
Right. So you wanted more flexibility? Is that the?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, I mean, I switched. I was, a lawyer. I was working internationally in London and Switzerland, and knew really that, children have always been my passion and my interest. I love working with children. That's probably why I had four of my own, and so I wanted to work with children, and that's why I then worked at a prep school in London, and then when I had my own, it was sort of, I guess, worked better with the family, being able to do the tutoring and work with families in that way.
Mm. But it must be you've got the perspective from both sides of the fence, so that must be super helpful. Have all your children finished school now, or not quite?
No, no. So the eldest one has just finished school. So he's just started at university. So he's in his first year at
First year.
university,
Yeah.
and then the next one down is in year 12. So she's just doing her mock A levels at the moment, And then I've got the next one down is year 11. So he's in the middle of GCSEs. So he's doing
Fun.
GCSE English language as we speak. And then the next one down is age 11. So he is in year 7.
Oh, so yours are a bit younger. So I've got my eldest is the same age as your eldest,
Uh,
first year of uni,
uh,
and then my son is sitting his A levels
oh, right.
currently. I
Oh,
think he's
okay.
off. He's off today. He had five this week, and today is
Yeah.
sports day because tomorrow is half
Uh,
term. So,
yes.
um, wow. Well, you yeah. So you must be busy. Let's talk a little bit about the. I know that we work within the independent school sector, but you have a specific focus on some of the very, very top independent schools. And would you just tell us like a little bit about the ones that you are specialist in and what are the typical entry points?
So most of the families that we work with, especially the international families, are aiming for the top UK boarding schools. So typically for boys, schools like Eton, Harrow, Winchester or Radley are very popular. For girls, schools like Wickham Abbey, Cheltenham Ladies, Down House are all also very popular. We do also have students occasionally who want to go to the day schools, you know, St Paul's, Westminster, but with those types of schools, it is, you know, usually the whole family is going to have to move to the UK. So for the most of our students will be entering at 13 plus. So for the start of year 9. But what some families don't realize, though, is that they have to start preparing very early.
Mm,
So even if you are joining in year 9 at 13 plus, you really need to start preparing, ideally 2 years before you take the entrance test. So the entrance test is usually taken in year 6, at the beginning of year 6. So ideally, we would recommend starting for these ultra, you know, super selective schools, you really need to start preparing by the beginning of year 4.
wow. Why do these schools do the entrance tests at the beginning of year six for a child that's going to be starting, what, 3 years later?
I think it's to give families a degree of certainty to help them plan, because especially if you are an international family, it's important to know and to make the necessary arrangements of where your children are going to be going to school, to give an insight, perhaps to help them decide where they want to go in that interim period. So, I mean, I've worked with a family recently, an international family who came to me first of all because the eldest son had wanted to go to Eton, but they hadn't done any preparation. So he took the admissions test, and he didn't make it past the first stage, unfortunately. So then they came to me for the second child, the younger one, and luckily they came to me with time. You know, he came to me when he was in year 4. I've been working with him personally for the last 2 years. He's now in year 6, and he recently has completed all of his tests. He has been offered a place at Harrow, Winchester, and Eton. So, and the family have now decided that he will be moving to start at prep school in England for year 7. So he's going to be going to a prep school in Oxford called Summerfields, which is a top boys prep school. Often a lot of the children from there go to Eton. So the family actually, he's just had the test this week for Summerfields, found out the next day he's been offered a place. So he will be starting there in September.
Mm.
And that has given him the opportunity and the chance to then join with some other students who will be starting with him at his chosen school at the same time.
So if Eton, Harrow, and Winchester have all offered him a year nine spot for year nine, and he's just going into year six, is that conditional or unconditional?
It usually is conditional. So for example, with Eton, it is conditional on him doing well with his prep school and also with the common entrance tests that he will need to take in year 8.
Right.
So what we tend to do is once we finish working with a student for the admissions tests, is we will continue to work with them even after they've been offered a place.
Mm,
So they will carry on working with us, and then even when they started the school, that doesn't mean that we stop working with them. So I mean, this particular family has asked if I could be the guardian for the children. Actually, the older one is coming to school in England. He's not going to Eton, but he is going to be starting at a different boarding school. So I keep up the relationship with the families. I don't provide guardianship services myself. I do work with other agencies that do, but I'm still going to and
mm.
still take an active role in their academic education.
Let's take a quick break to talk about something that can make all the difference for your child's educational journey. I'm thrilled to share that this episode is sponsored by Top Schools, your trusted partner in navigating the complex world of school applications. If you're aiming for a top independent school in the UK, Top Schools offers personalised consulting to ensure your child finds the very best fit with a guaranteed outcome. From identifying those best fit schools to crafting standout applications to invigilating the entrance exams, the expert team is with you every step of the way. Ready to take control of your child's future? Visit topschoolsadmissions.com or click the link in the show notes to learn more and book a consultation today. Use the code DESTINATION for 20% off. That code is DESTINATION for 20% off personalised support for entry into a top independent boarding school in the UK. Now, back to our conversation.
It's a lot of pressure for these kids, isn't it? I mean, I was going to ask you, well, why do you think these schools, I think I know the answer, but why do you think that these schools are so popular?
I think a lot of it is to do with the sort of the brand name, the reputation, what the parents have heard about it. You know,
Mm,
if you asked an international child in Hong Kong, for example, you know, what they thought of Eton, if they wanted to go there, they might have heard of it from their friends, maybe other children talking about it. Um, but it's often the parents. Maybe they have heard from their friends about other, you know, their children going.
mm.
So it tends to be just the reputation of the school.
Is the reputation driven by their grades?
Well, if you mean do they get a good reputation because they get good grades, I think, I mean, that's part of it, but then you have to remember that the schools are incredibly selective, aren't they? So,
Well, exactly.
yeah.
And I was going to ask you, if you start working with a child when they're sort of in year 4, are you selective? I mean, could you look at a child in year 4 and say, look, I'm good, but I'm not that good?
I think it's, you know, if we start working with a child at that stage, we have a chance to make a big difference. If a child comes to us only a few months before the exam, and for example, say they want to go to Eton, that's the only school they want to go to, and there is a big gap,
Mm.
then I think the parents have to be realistic and consider other schools as well, because it's not going to be possible. The schools are so oversubscribed, it's not going to happen.
But would you not say that if you've got plenty of time, if the child is in year 4, for example, have you ever, I mean, said to parents, look, I don't think that your son, in this case, if we're talking Eton Harrow, is is that material, is of that caliber, or I won't be able to get them to that level?
I think you have to be honest with parents. There's no point in just, you know, leading them to believe that their
Mm,
child will get a place at the school if they're really, you know, for example, if they have English as a second language and it's going to take a huge amount of time and commitment to get to the required level, and they, for example, the parents are not able to, you know, give him the time to do that. You know, it is really important that there is time but also you've got to have the foundations. You've got to have the necessary level of English, the vocabulary, the ability to, read and understand everything that you read. Timing in these tests as well is incredibly important. Even if you can read the passage and understand it, you've got to have the exam skills as well in order to achieve a high result on these adaptive tests.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just go back to my point. It's such a lot of pressure on these young children. Is it worth it, do you think?
I think that children, once they can see the success and, what they can actually achieve, I think it does make them happy, and it actually increases their future confidence and their ability in themselves when they know that they can succeed. And it sets them up really for, a love of learning, and builds their confidence, and will really help them in the future as well, whether they go to university or help them with their future career.
Mm. Do you think that in order to get into these top schools, do you think almost 100% of these children have been having tutoring for years?
I think they have. I think there's two different types of parents, really. Some will say, no, we haven't had any tutoring, and they don't really want to advertise the fact. But then others do, they're very happy to refer and recommend us, and, will tell all their other friends, yes, my son has got a place at Eton, this is who we've used. Some families are very happy for, us to share that even on social media. Another family who I worked with recently, and again, I started working with this particular child in year 3. He had very weak English when I first started working with him, so they knew they had to start early. And he's actually just won an academic scholarship to a top boarding school. So, working with him throughout an extended period of time, it's amazing to see what he's been able to achieve, and his parents are very happy to share that journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I didn't send my children to those sort of that level of like top is selective, you could call them elite boarding schools. And I've been on this podcast, I've been enjoying speaking to some heads of great top boarding schools. And I just wonder, what's the incremental value add that you get from, I guess there's a trade-off. There's a sacrifice that's been made for several years of tuition and some might say like a little bit of a lost piece of their childhood in order to prepare to get into these boarding schools. Wouldn't they have been just as successful, just as happy going to a great boarding school that they wouldn't have had to do all of that prep for?
I think that, there are lots of other good boarding schools as well, apart from just the super selective ones. There are a huge range of schools in England that can suit all different children. So parents shouldn't just consider the top ones. There are lots of other schools which are, maybe better suited for a particular child. So I think it is important to find the best fit for your child. And I know that's something that you do, Ruth, and you do an amazing job at helping find the best school that is suited to the child.
Mm. Yeah, I absolutely do believe in best fit, and I just wonder how much what's going through the parents' heads when they fixate on some of those top brand name schools. I mean, how much of your process, particularly interested in the onboarding stage, like you must talk with the parents quite a bit before you actually start working with a child. What does that process look like?
It depends whether they are wanting to come to us for school selection advice, or if they are just coming to us purely for the tutoring. So
Right.
even if the family are coming to us just for the tutoring, it is obviously really important to speak to the parents, find out what their goals are for their child, and find out, just make sure that the schools that they're aiming for are going to be the right choice. So we would meet the parents, discuss with them what their goals are. And we would also do an assessment, which is in a way similar to the types of tests that you do, because it's important to, have an idea of how they are currently performing. Because
Mm,
yes, we can help them improve those scores, and that's what we aim to do. But we need to know where they are at the moment and
yeah.
find out what the gaps are and how we can best help with the family.
Yeah. What assessment do you use?
Well, we have used in the past the academic profiling test, which
Right.
was previously run by Atom Learning, but there's been a change in that recently. So it's now independently organized.
Jimmy Feel and his partner, I forget.
Yes, that's right, Alistair Montgomery.
Okay.
So, yes, so we do work with the academic profiling test, and we also work with Atom Assessments,
Yeah.
who they both provide standardized edge scores and an adaptive online test, which covers English, maths, verbal reasoning, and nonverbal reasoning.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you decline students?
We don't decline students. We wouldn't say I'm not going to help your child. So we're not selective as to who we take on, which I know some tutoring companies might do because they might say, well, we only want to take on a child if we think that it's going to help our results. If
Mm,
we can then say, yes, we've got 90% of students into a certain school, but we won't say we're not going to help. We will always try and help, but we might guide the family as to which schools would be the best fit.
mm. So, we do the same. So, how do you think, or what steps do you take, and what questions do you need to ask in order to find the best fit?
Well, I think it's really important to speak to the parents first of all. Discussing with the parents about what their educational aims are. Do they want an academic school? Are results the most important thing? Is
Mm,
it does your child have a particular interest in sports or music, drama, arts? What is the child's interest as well? Are there any particular factors like location, or do they want just boys, just girls, or mixed? There are
mm,
lots of different things to consider, as well as do they want to necessarily do A levels or IB, or how
mm.
academic their child is. It's there are lots of different factors that have to be considered, which I know you do as well, and you do an amazing job at
Mm,
helping the
mm.
children and the families to find the school that would suit them best.
Yeah, I mean, I think we ask a lot of the same questions, but I think that it's tricky because a lot of parents they don't know what they don't know, right? So, we used to ask the question about boys, girls, or co-ed, and I think we've stopped asking now because we would like to, if we think that, for example, a boy would do well in a boys' school, we'll put some on as well as some co-ed school options. Because if you ask parents to start applying like too many filters, and you actually end up eliminating what might be some really great options, I find.
Mm.
But
That's true, and there are a lot of changes at the moment going on in the independent schools and boarding schools in the UK, with things like mergers and schools that
yeah.
were once just taking boys, for example, taking girls, or so the whole landscape is changing, and it's important not just to be too narrow-minded.
Yeah, exactly. So if you choose a boys' school, well, it's a boys' school today, but doesn't that, next year, a year later, they might be going co-ed. What are your thoughts on that, Juliet? You've alluded to the fact that this year has been a very difficult year for a lot of the independent schools. I mean, the rumours are that Eton and Harrow have spaces, or at least they did even just a few weeks ago, which is pretty much unheard of. Um, and as you say, schools merging, going into bigger groups, buying up schools, boys' schools going co-ed. What are your thoughts on some of that?
I think it's a huge shame for the smaller private schools, because some of these schools have been around for a very long time, And with especially the VAT, it has meant that a lot of parents have had to make a very difficult decision to take out their children. And then that, sadly has meant that some schools have closed. But I think that it will mean that, some of the schools, the very strong ones, will thrive. They are not necessarily going to be affected so much, but it's the smaller schools that are affected, and they have to do everything they can to safeguard their future, which is why they're doing all these things like the mergers, or taking girls or boys when they don't usually. But
But do you
it's
think it's,
sad for the families, really, the children who have to leave the schools.
yeah, and it was just unacceptable that they did it in the middle of a school year, in my
Mm.
to me. But aren't some of the bigger schools also, um, they can't be resting on their laurels and thinking that this won't affect them. I think Eton put on a full 20% of the VAT, didn't they? And they're
Mhm.
not the only school that did that. Quite a number of schools did that. But do you think the rumours were true that they had spaces this year?
I don't know, because I have heard other students say that they have not been offered a place.
Mm,
So if they if they did have places, why are they not offering a place to certain
mm,
students? Is
mm,
it because they just didn't meet the standards? Or, if they are desperate for students, why wouldn't they offer places to people who have applied there?
mm. Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? If they are, um, if their pipeline is not quite as full as it might have been in previous years, are they going to start offering places to students of slightly lower caliber?
I suppose, schools they may do. No school is going to want to have empty places. But I think that certainly with Eton, which is a school that we, have worked with very closely, I think that they're really, it's always going to be oversubscribed. They're not going to have a shortage of students who want to go there.
Mm. What's the school that the boy was it Winchester that went co-ed for sixth form?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you know about, well, what's your thoughts on why they did that?
I think it's some people think that there's some research that says that the boys will perform better academically with girls in the same environment at that age.
Mm,
Earlier on, some people, some research might say that actually girls are a distraction, and that it might not improve their results. So there are a couple of possible reasons. Is it to help the boys increase their grades? Is it to bring pupil numbers up? Nobody knows for sure the reason behind it, but those are a couple of the possible reasons.
what do you think is the reason?
I don't know for sure. I mean, I think it's probably a bit of both, really. Driving up the academic standards, but also families want it. I mean, I've got four children.
Mm,
I've got three boys and one girl, and I have chosen for them to go to a co-educational school. And it certainly makes things easier if they can all be at the same school. So if you do have a mixture of boys and girls, it can help. It can certainly help if they are all at the same school. And Brighton College is an example of a school that has done that really well. I mean, that's a school as well where we've sent a lot of students there. In fact, all of the international students who I've worked with so far, who have applied to Brighton College, have been offered a place, even though it is very selective, amazing academic results, a very, top performing school,
mm,
where, I have heard of other students who haven't been offered a place, and it is oversubscribed. But, they again are an amazing school that is co-educational and do get very good results.
mm. I mean, Brighton College is co-ed, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was speaking to a head the other day, and said it's a really bad business model to have a girls' school or a boys' school where you are effectively eliminating like half of the
Mm.
population. So So the cynic in me, yeah, I mean, some which other schools have now started accepting the other gender, or and the other thing that a lot of schools have started to do is where they were full boarding and compulsory, mandatory, full boarding, they started to now introduce a lot more flexi boarding or even day spaces, and we've seen that will continue to happen. I feel.
Yeah, I think that's an option that is popular with parents, particularly UK-based parents, but maybe not as popular with international families. Because if you are an international family, you don't want to be at a school at the weekend where everybody goes back home and you're left there and not going back home. Although you may be invited to friends' houses and things like that, which is obviously great. And but I think it's something that the UK families are more interested in now, that flexibility.
Agree. Um, let's go back to tutoring, which is what you do best. What are some of the common mistakes that you see families making in if they're applying, they aiming for the very top boarding schools? What mistakes do they sometimes make?
Well, one of the common mistakes is starting too late.
Yeah.
So coming to us, just a few months before an entrance exam and saying, I want my son to get into Eton. That's the only school I've applied to. We haven't
Yeah.
done any preparation so far, but I want you to get him into Eton. So, and then if you do an assessment and you realize that, they're nowhere near the level they need to be, it's very difficult because in that short amount of time, nobody is going to be able to get them up to the required level. So
Yeah.
starting too late and considering schools that are unrealistic is also another big mistake. If your child does not have very good English, and you don't have enough time to help improve that, you're not going to do extremely well on a competitive school entrance exam. So, giving them enough time to prepare, starting early is really important, but also the consistency with lessons. I think the parents have to prioritize the tutoring. So sometimes parents will say, oh no, I can't do lessons on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Oh, my child's got violin, rugby, various other activities. They can't do such and such a day because they've got so many other activities. But do you want your child to go to the school? Ultimately, you've got to prioritize it and not just, say, okay, I'm going to take off 2 months over the summer because, we're traveling. With online tutoring, you can have the lessons wherever you are in the world. We don't have to take a 2-month break. So we continue throughout the holidays and we need that consistency.
So it's really a lifestyle choice, and the parents have it's the parents' dream. How do these children have the discipline, or they have the compliance to just follow, and do they really understand why they're having to put in all of this effort and sacrifice their summer holidays for something that their parents want?
I think it's important that the child is on board too and that they want it to. So if the child is not really that keen, then that is going to be a problem. They're not going to want to do it. So the child has to be on board as well and really wanting to go to that school.
But they're so young. I mean, if you're talking about starting to work with them in year four, can they really understand what this means for them in what, however many, 5 years' time?
I don't think they necessarily do fully understand at that stage, and we don't always start talking about, preparing for a school at that stage. If they're starting in year 3 and 4, we're mainly focusing on the maths and the English skills, which are going to help with their school work anyway. So, even if the child doesn't get into whichever school they particularly, absolutely have to get into, then everything that we do with them is going to help them with their school performance and will help them succeed in whichever school they end up going to. So
True.
seeing
True.
how it can help them with their own school and with building up their own confidence is also really important. So, I mean, I worked with some children actually who weren't coming to England. They were actually in China, and I started teaching them when they were about 5 years old. And their parents didn't, they had no plans to send them to England. But I also work with children who are not necessarily coming to school in England. So, and I ended up teaching them for 5 years, and they loved the fact, they were so proud of the fact that they were the best in English in their class. They had better English than their parents. So, that will set them apart. That will really help their future education.
True, true. Do you see any difference? I mean, such a, as I'm asking the question, I realize I'm sort of overgeneralizing, but between girls and boys in their ability to sort of focus and see the path to what they want.
I think it depends more on the child, really, rather
Yeah.
than the gender. I mean, I've got a mixture of, well, three boys and one girl, and there's a mixture even within my own
Yeah.
children. Some people might say, oh, boys are not as driven or motivated, girls work harder, but I don't think you can generalize
No,
that
no.
way.
Mm,
One of my own children has been moved up a year academically, academic scholarships, interested in Oxbridge, so, and a very hard worker. So,
mm,
I think you can't just say it's girls or boys.
yeah.
It depends on the child, really.
Yeah, totally agree. Do you do you work with families? You've mentioned families from Hong Kong and China. Do you work with families from all over the world?
Yes, yes, that's right. So we have and we do work with families from Hong Kong, China, Japan, Singapore, the Middle East,
Okay.
also the UK, Canada, the US. So a lot of international families, but also families who are in England. The ones in England are mainly sort of London based and aiming for the London day schools.
Mm. Are all those families in, say, Canada, Japan, Singapore, are they looking at UK boarding schools or not necessarily?
So actually, the international families that we work with are all looking for boarding schools in the UK.
Mm.
Interestingly, there was a family who I worked with fairly recently who was from Shanghai, and their daughter, very, very able student, and originally their first choice was Wickham Abbey. And that's where, they planned on sending her. And she did get offered a place at Wickham Abbey, but she was also offered a place at St Paul's Girls' School in London. So they actually decided that the mother would move to London with the family,
Mm.
and they chose to go to St Paul's Girls over Wickham Abbey. So I think it depends on the whole, the family situation. Can one parent come to the UK, or is it definitely going to have to be boarding?
Mm. And I think that I'm not sure if there's a recent change, but the UKVI, the visa situation now allows for one parent to stay with their child. Is that right?
Yes, yes, I think so. Yes, and actually, that's another family that I'm working with has also recently decided that even though they're going to send the child to a boarding school, I think one parent is going to come to the
Right.
UK anyway, so that they can be here just, to see the child more frequently.
I'm sure their child is thrilled about that.
Mm. Yeah.
So we were talking about mistakes. I mean, obviously too late. I mean, we have exactly the same. Although it's never too late. I mean, there are always spaces in some schools, but obviously
Mhm.
not, maybe not particularly the schools that you're talking about or the schools that they might want. Yeah, being unrealistic. Obviously, it's. I mean, you speak with the parents. It's a difficult conversation, isn't it?
It is, it is. I mean, it's, not leaving enough time and then having unrealistic expectations on the particular type of school and the amount of sort of commitment that they're going to obviously have to put in, I think that's, it is difficult, but the parents need to really to be aware, because there's no point in just preparing for one school when it's not realistic.
Is the preparation for different schools different?
Well, actually, it does vary. It does vary for different schools, but a lot of them have the same test for the first stage. So the first stage is often similar. It's usually an adaptive online test. So things like the ISEB pre-test is quite widely used, and there's also the Quest assessments, which has been developed by Atom Learning. That's now used quite a bit by some schools. And then there's the new Cambridge Insight, which is
Yes.
what
We we
the
use that one.
rebranding. Yeah.
Yeah, we use that one. I've done Quest. I've invigilated that for a number of schools. But is the ISEB pre-test, is that for international families as well as domestic families?
We do have some international families, yes, that do that as well. And then there's also the UK ISET as well, which is specifically for international families. So some schools will look at that too.
Okay. The UK what? ISEF?
UK ISET, yeah.
Oh, UKISET, I call it.
Yes.
I think that's fallen out of favour. Um, it's just it's like the Cambridge Insight or the CAT test
Hmm.
with a Cambridge English bit bolted
Yes.
on. It used to be very popular, but I'm not seeing it as popular now. But
Well, I recently worked with a student actually from Japan who had to do that
okay.
test. I think it was, well, she was applying for various different schools, but I was helping her with that one.
Mm,
She did get offered a place at Uppingham, so
mm,
so that's good.
mm.
But I don't know if it was that test that was needed for that school. It was certainly for one of the schools that she was applying to.
Funny story. My son had to sit that test. I'm not going to say the name of the school, but it is designed for EAL learners. It's designed for children who have English as an additional language. And some schools, just see that the child is overseas, is not in the UK, and there's just a tick box, and somehow their system doesn't quite work it out. So he had to sit for that test, and he came back, and I said, "So how was it?" He said, "Well, the front screen of this test asks you to select your first language, and English is not an option, so he had to
Oh,
select something
oh,
else, like
okay.
random language." And yeah, so I mean, I always talk to the schools about that. They can't assume that
Hmm.
just because a child is in Japan, for
Hmm.
example, that they're not. There's plenty of really good international schools in Japan now
Hmm.
as well. So this is interesting. Let me just sort of flesh this out a bit. So the first stage is an online adaptive test,
Hmm.
which we'll put some links, and there's various ones that if parents are
Hmm.
interested, they can subscribe and do some mock assessments and all of that. What's the next stage, Juliet?
So if it does, this is where it tends to vary.
Okay.
So depending on the particular school. So, for example, if you had a child who wanted to go to Eton after taking the ISEB pre-test, if they do well enough in that, then they will be invited back for the second stage. So it's not that everybody will
Yeah.
automatically be invited to do the second stage. They have to do well enough in the first stage.
Yeah.
So the second stage is for Eton is called the Eton List Test,
Hmm.
and that is also an online adaptive test. It is more challenging. Some of my students have taken it recently. There's not much information you can find out about online about it. It's the school doesn't really give away much about it. There aren't really any specific mock tests that you can do that mimic it exactly. But we know from experience of our students who have done it, the kind of things that can come up. So it is online, and then there's also, which a lot of parents don't even realize, is there is also a written element to it. So the student will have to, spend some time typing in the written essay, and then there's also an interview. So the interviews are really important because they have to make sure that even if your child is academically very able, that they will be the right fit for the school. So looking at the interview results combined with the academic assessments and the references from the current school are going to be very important when the school decides whether or not they want to offer a place to your child.
Yeah. Is the interview a third stage or is that part of the second stage?
It's part of the second stage usually, yes. So at Eton, it's part of the second stage.
So presumably you coach the students for the interview, for interview
Yes,
practice as well. Yeah.
that's right. Yes, and different schools have different sort of styles of interview. So yeah, I mean, some schools like Winchester in particular are known for having quite tough interviews that are quite lengthy, which can even go, up to an hour. So
Wow.
and some of them will ask academic questions. You might be given a problem solving question, or academic, looking at a poem or looking at a picture, something like that within the interview. So it's important to know what to expect for each individual school that you're going to, and
Yeah.
to obviously to research the school and know why you want to go there.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the difference, isn't it? I mean, you must see so many hardworking, academically able students that on paper they can perform, they can get the grades, but then the interview is where the school is going to learn about that individual child, their personality, and if they're going to be truly a good fit. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What are some of the interesting, like, what are some of the, you don't have to name particular schools or attribute them to particular schools, but what are some of the strange questions or the style of the interview format that you can give us a few examples?
Well, one of the sort of slightly unusual type of question is they might give them an example of a picture. There's a famous picture called "This is not a pipe," and then it says that in French, and then they might be asked, "Is this a pipe?" And this is the more the type of question that you might be expecting at an Oxbridge interview.
Yes. Yeah.
So, even for children who are 10 or 11, they may be asking them challenging questions like that.
Wow.
So, you have to think about how you're going to answer it. You've got to sort of plan for anything unexpected like this with the child, and help show your thinking process.
Yeah.
You've got to help the child demonstrate their capacity to think.
Yeah, that reminds me of a very young children's book called Not a Stick. Do you know that book?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, this is not a stick, and
Okay.
various pictures with very few words. But I guess that is interesting. Like what I was saying earlier, the children, they might be excellent at their English and their maths and their verbal skills, but imagine their imagination or their ability to apply like an object to a real world situation and discuss that. I think there's others that do scenario based questions.
Yes, that's right. I mean, the other thing that some schools are doing now is the group interview. So doing having other children there at the same time, that can obviously it can be quite daunting and quite scary for a child, especially if they don't have English as a first language. Not only having to meet the teachers and the people who are interviewing you, but then having to interact with other children can be quite intimidating, really. So knowing how to react with the other children, and not being too dominant, not trying to boss all the other children around, and listening as well is something that sometimes people forget, that is a good skill to do.
Yeah, especially the ones that have been coached by
Yes.
maybe sort of less, we had that situation recently where a parent was like, my child was so confident. They went in there and they talked and talked and talked and talked and talked and asking us why didn't they get in? And we're like, okay, then that's, it seems obvious that your child dominated the whole situation. Mm, yeah. What other sorts of like interesting interview questions come up?
I think they could ask sort of questions like, if you had a dinner party, which guests would you invite?
Oh, I like that
So
one. Yeah.
that can be a tricky one. Or if you were the prime minister for the day, what would you change in the world? Or
Yeah.
sort of questions that are designed to get you thinking.
Yeah.
So apart from, the general questions like why do you want to come to this school, or what subjects do you like best, which are, fairly easy, although you have to make sure that you don't sound too prepared.
Mm,
It's, the thinking questions are the ones that often children who haven't had any preparation might be slightly thrown by and not know how to
mm.
answer it.
I would imagine that the preparation for those sorts of thinking questions, apart from obviously some sort of targeted, some coaching practice, would be wider reading.
Yes, absolutely. And having family discussions about these sort of issues. So, sitting around a table with your family over meal times, coming up with the types of questions that could be discussed, and discussing them with other family members can be really helpful too.
Yeah, the lost art of family dinner discussions. Such a shame, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
We are running out of time. But so we said start. I'm going to flip your like the mistakes. So two
Mhm.
top tips for parents. Obviously, starting too late is a bad idea. So start early, preferably as the child is entering year four. Was
Mhm.
what we said earlier. Be realistic. So that would mean having a chat with someone like yourself or myself, based on the test results of an adaptive
Mhm.
test to come up with a list of good fit schools. So that's two. I like three. Can you offer a
Mhm.
third top tip?
I think the third part is to make sure that you have somebody who's helping you, who's experienced and has got a proven track record with the types of schools that you want to go to. So I
Yeah.
know that you work with very closely with some schools. I also have a lot of experience with some schools, and knowing exactly what you have to do for the
Mm,
tests, and having somebody to guide you and help your child so that they're not just doing preparation that isn't targeted and directed towards a specific test that your child is taking is really crucial,
mm,
because it is a big investment in time and money, and you don't want to be doing something that is not actually going to help your child achieve what your goals are. So, you've got to find somebody who will help, and somebody who is experienced and has the necessary qualifications and background who can
mm.
do that.
I mean, not to do us out of a job, obviously, because that's what we do, but do you think that's absolutely necessary?
I think some parents probably do apply themselves,
I
and
do. Yeah.
yes, I mean, they may be able to do that if they have the knowledge, expertise, time, um, to help their child fully. Sometimes just working with, in terms of the tuition, working with your own child can be difficult. So,
I wouldn't
you know.
recommend it. Yeah.
I know, even though I'm a teacher, I have other teachers that I work with who
Right.
teach my own children. So,
Mm,
yes, I helped them when they were doing entrance exams. I didn't have another tutor at that stage. I, taught them myself for that. But when they are older, particularly, I have other teachers now that work with my own children.
mm,
So, it's not just entrance exams that we do. We help children from, I've done sort of 4+ preparation with students, but also just helping them even if they're not doing
mm,
entrance exams. So
mm,
building up the skills, encouraging a love of learning. It doesn't have to be something that, is a tedious chore. A lot of the time we make the lessons engaging and fun, and the children actually really enjoy it.
I guess the question is, because as a parent, I didn't go in for all of this. I wasn't too um, single-minded about like my children have to go to certain schools. I'm very much about the best fit. But what was I going to ask? I completely lost my train of thought. Um,
Was it
mm.
to do with parents preparing their own children?
It wasn't, but I certainly
No.
would not recommend that.
No. I think that it is challenging. I mean,
Mm,
for me, I am a qualified teacher, so I could help my children when they were doing entrance exams,
mm.
but for certainly as they get older, I wouldn't be sort of teaching them GCSEs or A levels.
I remember the question.
Hmm.
The question is, if your child is in like a top prep school, or even if they're not, for example, do you not expect that the school is doing the preparation? You're paying, if they're in a top prep school, you're already paying, high tuition fees. They're a top prep school, and you've chosen that prep school because they have a track record of, um, you know, graduation, students graduating into the sorts of schools that you want them to go to. So then does it become necessary to hire someone such as yourself in addition to the school?
I think it's because the schools are, um, very competitive if you want to go to the top selective schools, and they are oversubscribed. I mean, some schools have less than 10% of students are actually offered a place. So, and if everybody else is doing tutoring and your child doesn't, then your child is going to be at a disadvantage. So, you can choose not to do it, but then you have to be able to expect that your child won't necessarily have the edge and they won't necessarily get the offers when their friends might. So we do work with children as well who are, prep schools, international families who've come over to prep schools, and the prep schools don't usually let them have lessons when the children are at school, but that doesn't stop them from having lessons at exeats, half terms, school holidays, and they usually do.
Yeah, no, I know. It's supposed it's what you said was, if everyone else is doing
Mm.
it, then you feel that you have to do it too. And I just wonder, where does it end? But it is, as you say, it's a commitment, and if parents are very, very focused on certain uber selective schools, then you've kind of got to play the game, right?
Yes, and I think it does help as well, especially supporting children once they've joined the schools. So we
Yeah.
find that when a child has joined, say, one of our students, an international student, has joined Eton, and he still has lessons with us in the holidays. So it's
Mm,
not preparing for entrance exams, but it's helping him get the best results that he wants to achieve for his
yeah.
GCSE exams.
Mm. Well, that's great. Thank you, Juliet. I think we had three top tips. We'll summarize everything. We'll put all of the contact details. So if parents are looking for tuition for some of these top London schools, London day schools, or top boarding schools, we'll put your contact details in. Thank you, Juliet. It's been great to meet you online. I hope that we will get to meet in person very soon. And yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Thank you.
Thanks, Juliet.
Thanks for listening. If today's episode sparked questions, or if you're ready for support with UK boarding school admissions, we're here to help. Reach out to us at www.topschoolsadmissions.com or follow the link in the show notes. Your child's exceptional UK boarding school educational journey starts with a conversation, so let's have a chat.